All right, I guess I'll call this a review video. It's whatever. Anyway, I don't watch a lot of TV. And just to show y'all I'm serious when I say this, I've yet to watch animes like Bleach, Naruto, Jujutsu Kaisen, is that how you say it? Demon Hunter. Then there's TV shows I haven't watched like Game of Thrones, Black Mirror, Stranger Things. I mean, it's a long list of all this supposedly dope shit that I've got to watch. And chances are I'll never get around to it. And why won't this happen? Because I grew up watching a lot of good television as a kid. You talking about the Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Dick Van Dyke Show, You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx, The Honeymooners, The Outer Limits, Knight Rider. God, boy, TV used to be so fucking special, y'all. Damn it. You know, I might have to make a video on that shit right there. But despite all the TV I watched as a kid, I still made time to be active. I still went outside and played. And as an older man in my 50s, that has not changed. I much rather get up and be active, you know, tend to my garden, exercise, eat right, just live actual life. You know what I'm saying? Guess what? You might not have realized this, but we do know what happens when people die. We do. You get a whole bunch of prayer hands and posts telling you to live life and that life is short and make sure you hug your loved ones. Just duh. It's just like, really? You're supposed to know that. You know, when you go to a funeral and you see the body in the casket, that's a hint and a half for your ass. You know, you got to start getting busy living or die trying. But we really do see that when you die, life just keeps on going. It's just another day for someone else. So it kind of really puts it in perspective that you really have to take care of yourself. And if you have people to love, you know, you take care of them too, but your job one is yourself. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, don't lose sight of that. The bottom line is this though, time and the seasons, they do affect everything. So if it's too cold outside in January and February, I'm more apt to settle in the house and begin to watch dumbass TV. Since I love cartoons, I settled in on the full seasons of Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty. Now, Solar Opposites was funny, but in the end, it became way too gay for me. I'm hetero and I'm not into gay jokes or gay situations. Watching two male aliens kiss, that shit just made me feel icky. But again, it's a funny show for sure. And the side story involving the shrunken people was great shit. I was tuning in for that story by itself. But let's get to Rick and Morty. Now, Rick and Morty reminded me of Futurama, which is a show that I love. But it reminded me of Futurama in a way that the writers of these shows can get crazy, silly, and downright scientific. Now, I'm a writer that's the same way. So Rick and Morty was right up my alley. After watching the entire series thus far, I think it was like 8 seasons, I figured I would make this video to kind of review what I myself took from this cartoon. Because at the end of the day, cartoons, movies, all of this stuff is motion picture creativity, it's motion picture art. You know what I'm saying? So you can find things in cartoons and they'll definitely make you think. Now, I won't waste my time explaining the show because I'm aware that I'm late as hell when it comes to watching this particular cartoon. So I guess the main comments that I have and the main things that I take away from Rick and Morty are these things. One, the main character, Rick Sanchez, aka Rick C-137. He never wanted any of this. And the show is so emotionally well written that it's easy to get lost in this fact. Each and every adventure happens so fast and without any regard for consequences that you get wrapped up in the moments. And 80% of the moments happen to be dimensional rides with an adventurous grandson and his drunken nihilistic grandfather. The first season was the writers just having fun, with the season finale setting off the next season. But the most important moment of all, for me, is season 3, episode 1, when we get a flashback of the moment that Rick C-137, again, the main character, is confronted by a character called Rick Prime. Rick Prime is the Rick of another dimension or time that invents a device called the portal gun, with the ability to travel between space and time. The portal gun is capable of time travel, which is self-explanatory, interdimensional travel, which means he can go to different realities and parallel universes, and space travel, meaning he could travel anywhere in space, from the kitchen to China or Mars, basically. As Rick Prime tells Rick C-137, this invention gives you the power of a god. Now let me explain that shit. See, in theory, a portal gun like this would make you the most intelligent person in the galaxy, because it allows you to go anywhere, do anything, and experience more than any other being in the galaxy or possibly the known universe. And with this experience comes ultimate knowledge, because each and every mistake you make, you can go back in time and correct it, or leave that dimension altogether and start in another one. The downside is that sooner or later your existence becomes boring because you know every fucking thing. You begin to become apathetic towards living and wonder what the hell is the real purpose of living if you win all the time. Rick C-137 knew that the portal gun was a bad decision as soon as he heard Rick Prime's pitch. So Rick C-137 passed on it quickly. It wasn't even much for him to consider. And Rick C-137 took it a step further. Once Rick Prime left, he was going to stop being an inventor altogether. He didn't want to take the chance of ever creating that portal gun for himself. Now, by the way, Rick Prime and Rick C-137 are the only Ricks that invented time travel, or the portal gun. The other Ricks were given the portal gun by Rick Prime. Now, why did Rick Prime do this? Apparently, and I mean, this is the way I took it, he wanted every Rick in every dimension to have that power, because Rick Prime is pretty much on some God complex shit. And from what I've gathered, Rick C-137 is possibly the only Rick to ever pass up on the portal gun out of countless dimensions. So again, the protagonist of the story, the central figure, Rick C-137, is actually a really wise and good man. Unfortunately, Rick Prime, upset that Rick C-137 turned him down, kills Rick's wife and daughter in front of him, out of pure pettiness, it seems. Which makes Rick C-137 build that fucking portal gun with the express purpose of finding Rick Prime and killing his ass. Now, Rick Prime took everything from C-137 Rick and set him on a life of alcoholism, nihilism, and murder. But did Rick C-137 have a choice? Yes, there's always the choice, the hardest choice that we usually don't make. See, here's the deal. Rick C-137 could have buried his wife, or what the hell was left of her, and his kid, and just stuck to his convictions, safe with the knowledge that he would never create that gun, and that would keep him from becoming a monster like Rick Prime, the kind of man who killed his family. That's an incredibly difficult choice to make, but we always have a choice to walk away, folks. Even when walking away isn't the option, we can defend ourselves, but yet show mercy, choosing to not become the animals or monsters that attack or oppress us. But in Rick C-137's defense, to see your wife and child killed, disintegrated in front of you is traumatic as hell. He snapped. I mean, he didn't give a fuck about moral choices at that point. After creating the portal gun, Rick C-137 spends every waking moment of his life trying to find Rick Prime and killing countless alternate dimensional Ricks. But he keeps running into dead ends because Rick Prime is almost godlike in his intellect. He's always 3 and 4 steps ahead, literally. Now eventually, after coming up with no leads, Rick C-137 goes to Rick Prime's reality and finds his family. He finds that unlike his own daughter, Rick Prime's daughter is alive and has a husband and 2 children. So he stays in the dimension with the ulterior motive of waiting for Rick Prime to return so he can kill his ass. But that never happens. See, Rick Prime abandoned his family once he created the portal gun. He saw himself as godlike and felt that the only person who could understand him was himself. But Rick C-137 told him flat out, "I'm a different Rick. I don't want that fucking gun." So yeah, Rick C-137 is with Rick Prime's family and takes Rick Prime's grandson Morty on adventures. Why? Because it seems to pass the time. Because usually Rick C-137 is drunk as fuck. Now, from the very start, Rick has a concern and care for his now adult daughter from another dimension. After all, Rick Prime killed his daughter when she was still a child. But the rest of the family he doesn't care much for, at least until later seasons. Oddly enough, he treats his grandson Morty without much care and concern. But having watched the entire run of Rick and Morty, I see that the writers wanted to evolve him as time went on. Now, at first, Morty was someone Rick didn't want to get attached to because his focus was on Rick Prime. But no matter what, eventually, the person you are is going to show up, and Rick C-137 is a family man from the start. I think I watched 8 seasons. I forget, but I watched them all. I watched as Morty grew as a character. I mean, he's always scared, and he should be. But he does go off on his own on certain adventures and kicks ass mercilessly. But like Rick, there are many different Mortys from different dimensions, and one in particular is called Evil Morty. Now, Evil Morty is interesting because I want to see where they take the character. Now, the thing is, Evil Morty isn't really evil. He is simply an incarnation of Morty that got tired of his particular Rick. Actually, he's sick of all Ricks. See, here's the deal. A bunch of Ricks came together for the purpose of their continued survival. They call themselves the Council of Ricks. They, I think, with the help of Rick C-137, created a Citadel-like space station that powers something called the Central Finite Curve. Now, this is the best way to explain it, all right? Picture 100 bubbles. Each bubble represents a different multiverse with its unique dimensions, and then enclose those 100 bubbles in a giant bubble. So now those multiverses, those bubbles, those individual bubbles, cannot connect to other bubbles outside of that large bubble that they're stuck in. That is the Central Finite Curve. All of those bubbles inside the large bubble represent realities where Rick exists. He could be dumb Rick, smart Rick, gay Rick, but no Ricks are able to escape that large overall bubble. And alternately, no other people from other multiverses are allowed to get into the bubble. But I believe that this C-137 Rick agreed to this Central Finite Curve situation because if he is trapped in the giant bubble, that's the Central Finite Curve, then so is Rick Prime. And this shows you that C-137 Rick is relentless, man. He doesn't mind being stuck in jail as long as he can get his hands on Rick Prime. But here's the thing. Evil Morty doesn't want to be stuck in this giant bubble of Ricks. As far as he's concerned, this is all a setup to keep Rick as the supreme being in this giant bubble. Evil Morty launches an elaborate plot that leads him to destroying the Citadel, destroying the Council of Ricks, and finally escaping the Central Finite Curve, thus allowing him to travel to another universe with his own portal gun. Now all of that happens like what, season 5 or 6? Now as far as I'm concerned, they could have stopped the series with Evil Morty finally being free, because the shit was fly. It was 100% fly. You know what I'm saying? Evil Morty is a genius, but he's still a Morty, and that means he's a 14-year-old kid being shown the wonders of the multiverse by his grandfather. All that Evil Morty is, whether he will ever admit it or not, is because of a Rick. And to be technical, he stole a bunch of knowledge from tons of Ricks before killing them. And he even killed his version of Rick, who is called Evil Rick. Evil Morty wants to be his own man, and that's like any adolescent. But he isn't a man. He's just a genius kid with a lot of growing up to do. But it gets deeper than that. Season 7 is when a lot of things get explained and wrapped up for me. Episode 5 is called Unmort Ricken. It explains Evil Morty's backstory, how after one adventure he got sick of Evil Rick and decided to put his master plan in motion. Now he took over the body and mind of Evil Rick, but notice, he got Evil Rick drunk first. This lets you know that Evil Morty couldn't beat his Rick straight up. So everyone who thinks that Evil Morty is smarter than Rick is mistaken. They're on the same level. Morty needed an edge. Simple as that. From there, it goes to a montage of previous episodes that piece together Evil Morty's plan from the start. But fuck all that. The real meat of this episode is that Rick C-137 is finally able to locate Rick Prime. But the device he uses to do this actually causes ripples throughout all the multiverses, including those multiverses outside the Central Finite Curve. This is where Evil Morty is just chilling, trying to live his new life. So Evil Morty pays Rick C-137 and his Morty a visit. This is the one episode where I've watched like 4 times because there's death here and the writers are letting it all hang out. The exchanges between Evil Morty and Rick are what's key. Because in the seasons before, Evil Morty had zero respect for C-137 Rick, because to him, all Ricks are the same. He's seen the minds of literally hundreds of them. To him, all Ricks are just spoiled children, and he is simply above them. And he hates Mortys because he sees them as weak and forgiving. Evil Morty is an anomaly. Just like Rick C-137 is a different Rick from all the others, so is Evil Morty. And I'll touch on this later. Evil Morty is also arrogant because he can be. Like he says in the episode, everything is what I think it is. Like that's what he says. He knows everything. But with this line, you see the issue that Evil Morty is gonna face. He's too fucking smart. The exact same issue Rick C-130 said would happen to anyone with that portal gun. The other thing is Evil Morty will also kill in order to achieve his ultimate goal. Nothing else matters. He's killed countless people, the same as his grandfather Rick. Yet in this episode, you can see a glimpse of mutual respect between Evil Morty and Rick C-137. There's a part where the three of them, Rick and both Mortys, are trapped and their portal guns won't work. And when he sees this, he asks Evil Morty what he thinks the issue is. Now early in the season, that would have never happened. But at this particular moment, the two of them have a respectful exchange of what could have possibly happened. Then Rick begins to try to figure out what's wrong with the guns before the trap kills all of them. The minute Rick rubs his head, Evil Morty immediately says, "Don't freak out." That's concern for Rick. I said, wow. Together, they escaped the trap. That was a legit team up by two people that could not fucking stand each other. Toward the end, it takes the combined efforts of Rick C-137 and Evil Morty and Morty Prime to take down Rick Prime. Rick C-137 looks to be killed to me, but he's revived by Evil Morty, but only after Evil Morty got the information he needed from Rick Prime. The schematics for the Omega device. This is a device that can erase a person from every dimension. So you don't exist anywhere, anywhen. You're just erased. Rick Prime used the Omega device to erase Diane. That would be Rick C-137's wife. But by using this device, he erased all Dianes from all Rick's existences. I'll get to that shit later. So anyway, now that he's revived by Evil Morty, Rick C-137 proceeds to beat Rick Prime to death with his bare hands. Pure hate drove him this fucking far, and now the battle is done. Rick C-137 has fulfilled his purpose of vengeance. Now then, Evil Morty, in a smug manner, he asks him how it feels. But he already knows. It feels empty. Like, now there's nothing. So, Rick C-137, he tells Morty to fuck off. And so Evil Morty warns him not to come after him because with the Omega device, he can end every Rick whenever he wants to. Remember, he hates Ricks. But then Morty Prime says, why don't you just do it and stop threatening to do it? But then Evil Morty says he doesn't want a bunch of vengeful Summers, that would be Morty's sister, coming after him. Now, why would this happen? Because in later seasons, Rick C-137 gets closer to his granddaughter, Summer. And Summer loves her grandfather, Rick, a lot. But I'll touch on that later as well. Lastly, Evil Morty acknowledges that there is something different about Rick C-137. And that's something he could use later. Then he tells Rick, quote, seriously though, fuck you. Don't come after me. It won't end well for you. Now see right there, once again, is that 14-year-old anger. Evil Morty had a very abusive Rick and the kid is traumatized. Once again, just like Rick C-137, trauma, turning a decent person into their worst selves. C-137 Rick, for all of his shit, showed a care and concern for his adopted family. It's not even his family, but he attaches to them because that's who he is. At first, nothing mattered to C-137 Rick, but he found a way to have a family. Something he didn't think he could ever have again. He has yet to admit it, but he needs them. They make his life matter. The episodes after this, they pale in comparison. I mean, you see that Rick C-137 is looser now, spending more time with family. His mood is a bit different. Now he's more of a grandfather tinkering and doing awesome shit and getting the family involved versus being a malcontent, angry at existence and doing dangerous shit to keep from drinking himself into oblivion. And he went to therapy, which is great to see. He even apologized for some shit he did in an episode. All of this is character growth. I love it. It's great when cartoons mimic real life so much that they inspire actual humans. I await the next season, but I've got comments and questions. 1. The Omega device. Evil Morty can't destroy every Rick like he says he can. See, the thing is, the Citadel of Ricks would go to dimensions and get the DNA from actual Mortys and make clones from that DNA. Every Rick needs a Morty because Ricks have a lot of enemies, and the Morty's dumb brain waves act as a cloaking device, shielding Ricks from people that will want to destroy them. Listen, this is what they said in the cartoon, and I think that's lame writing, to be honest. Anyway, to my knowledge, Evil Morty wasn't grown in a vat like a lot of the other Mortys. In fact, he went into the Morty database and erased all information of himself. Since he wasn't grown by the Citadel, then that means that Evil Morty has a mother, who of course needed a Rick and a Diane to even exist. So how in the hell could Evil Morty destroy all Ricks, his grandfather, without destroying himself? And even that line about not wanting a vengeful Summer coming after him, how would that be possible without Summer's grandfather ever existing? Even Rick C-137 knew that he couldn't use the Omega device on Rick Prime. It would kill him too. But he knew if such a device existed, then it could find every incarnation of a Rick, and thus the Rick Prime that he was looking for. The Omega device for me is just a big question mark. I don't get it. Question 2. Why did Rick Prime kill all the Dianes in existence? Once again, this is that Omega device shit. Why take such a nuclear option to a problem that could have clearly been pinpointed? In the season 7, episode 5, he traps a bunch of Ricks who he said didn't want a portal gun, and so he killed their Dianes, proving that he didn't need to wipe out every Diane. So did he do it because he sees Diane as a weakness to Ricks as a whole? And the other question is, why do Ricks need to have a portal gun or die? Alternately, this sort of explains why the Citadel went through time collecting DNA of Mortys, because not every Rick in existence has a Diane, only a finite amount of them. They saw how important Mortys are and made sure every Rick has one. The other question is, if all Dianes are killed, then how the hell are there any Beths and grandchildren? This is when the shit ain't making sense. When Rick Prime used the Omega device on Slow Mobius, it erased him from existence. His wife went looking for him but never found him, of course. But why did she remember him at all? So is it a timing thing? Like use a device after the kids are born, then take out the targeted person, and that somehow makes the children unaffected? Like for instance, Rick Prime's Beth was alive and had a family, but her mom was gone, erased or killed after giving birth to Beth, I guess. The Omega device is too nuclear to use even as a plot device, in my opinion. It just causes confusion. The last thing I want to touch on is how I think this series should end. I mean, if I was part of the writing room, before Rick Prime killed his family, in his pitch, he told Rick C-137 that having the portal gun would be like having the ultimate party with the only guy they actually like, themselves. Rick C-137 disagreed. He said that sounds lonely. And sure enough, throughout the entire series thus far, there is a sadness and loneliness that Rick carries. To me, the best way to eventually end this series is for Rick C-137 to leave the central finite curve, find so-called Evil Morty, and reconcile. Because the truth is that across infinite universes, if there's a Rick Sanchez who creates or is given a portal gun, then there's a Morty or some grandchild with a similar name or similar look. Because family, and those atoms that make us family, may very well stretch into all spaces and all times. It doesn't matter that the Council of Ricks made it happen or not. The point is, the shit happened. So a power much larger is shaping the lives of Ricks and Mortys. Obviously, the writers. But this is especially true for Rick C-137, Evil Morty, and the deceased Rick Prime and his Morty. They're all responsible for one another's lives and have affected their choices. Deeper than that, Rick C-137 needs to step out of his comfort zone of the central finite curve where he's the smartest in the multiverse. That's part of the reason why he's so nihilistic. There's no challenge and no growth as a result. There's no wonders in life, so there's no joy of discovery for him as a scientist. As old as he is, he would need to take the challenge that all young people like Evil Morty take. Be brave, step out into the world, get from under your parents' or grandparents' dominion. Fail and hopefully live to learn and fail again. Evil Morty wanted to live on his own terms, but the amount of disdain he has for Ricks simply shows the amount of hurt he still deals with. When someone is truly over their trauma, the person who traumatized them no longer has any emotional hold. That part where Evil Morty tells Rick C-137 fuck you as he leaves shows that there's a young man who once loved his grandfather, Evil Rick, and was betrayed too many times. There's a respect that's lost. There's a hate for every Rick as a result of that. But here's the thing. Being the genius that he is, Evil Morty must know that Rick C-137 is not the mean and evil Rick he grew up with. And that glimmer of forgiveness or compassion is exactly what keeps Evil Morty from destroying every Rick in existence. Like he said to Rick C-137 at the end of that episode, there's something different about you, and I can use that. That line may not be as nefarious as it sounds. Instead of taking advantage of Rick in some dangerous scheme, maybe Evil Morty is thinking about how this Rick that's different from all the others, could teach him something about himself. Rick and Morty, series finale, it's gotta be with those two, portal jumping together. I mean, if space is infinite, then so are the adventures. And Rick C-137 and so-called Evil Morty would finally have found the one person that they could both respect, relate to, and even love other than themselves. And let's not ignore the fact that both C-137 Rick and Evil Morty have killed countless beings. You know, it reminds me of the time when Thanos asks Adam Warlock, have you ever destroyed a world? And Adam answers, I've destroyed a galaxy once, but never a world. It's a joke between two very powerful and nihilistic people. Thanos and Adam Warlock, once bitter enemies who at one point literally killed one another, eventually became friends and confidants because no one else seemingly in the universe could possibly understand them. Oh yeah, the writers of Rick and Morty. I gotta give y'all respect for imagination, and real recognizes real, and I gotta say that the devices that Rick comes up with are between what the fuck and holy shit, I wished I thought about that. If I were around more writers like that, my writing skills would definitely raise. I wish I knew folks like that, but I've yet to find them. Like right now, so many people just like consuming the content but lack the will or vision to create meaningful or thought-provoking content. You know, comics, movies, cartoons, it doesn't matter. It's not even about the message. You know what I'm saying? That's where so many of y'all fail, and y'all wind up never moving as a result. You think that the Wright brothers, those two boobs that actually built like the first airplane, so they say, you really thought they knew the first prototype would be a success? They didn't know that shit. They just built it, and they knew they could fail upwards from there. It's about the energy put in and the movement that energy causes. Did y'all really think that the writers of Rick and Morty ever thought it would get this far from the start? Hell no. They were just hoping to get another season. If they did, they'd figure out the rest as they went along. Rick Sanchez and Morty are now iconic. They had no message in the beginning. Obviously, the cartoon is inspired by the Back to the Future franchise with Doc and Marty. I think Michael J. Fox's character was called Marty McFly, but I'm not sure. But from the start, it was about the energy of these characters, doing crazy shit and hoping that energy causes movement. Look at this GIF right here. That's literally what it's all about. Seriously, look at this shit. See what I'm saying? This is exactly why I create. And I thank God for making me this way, because I always see opportunity on a blank canvas. To me, the night sky is a huge blackboard for me to write sketches and characters on. But sermon is over. Y'all either hear me or you don't. But the world is changing. The earth is changing as well. Life has changed. We are all getting older, and there's much more to living than sitting and watching this fucking TV. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, back in my day, that cartoon Rick and Morty would have made one of us try to create a fucking portal gun that worked, or at least had limited dimensional travel range. For real. We used to watch TV and go outside and try to duplicate that shit. In this era, man, please. Y'all just happy to consume instead of feeling that crazy energy of inspiration that makes a person say, fuck it, I'm gonna go make this shit. I'm gonna make a miracle. Jesus, what the hell happened to y'all? My generation was magic, yo. Fucking magic. And everything that this new generation has is pretty much built off of the fact that we were making miracles, man. Seriously. I blame the food. It doesn't do anything except keep you all lazy. But anyway, that concludes this review. If I watch something that moves my pen, then I'll do another one of these. But I'm definitely going to do a video about the shows I used to watch as a child and adolescent. But I'll put it on my new ASMR page. Check it out. The link is in the description. Subscribe to it. Subscribe. Do you feel the hypnosis yet? So ridiculous. So ridiculous. God, I hate YouTube. Fuck YouTube. Jesus. Speaking of which, come by the website, TYR Mobile and TYRFreeman.com. Download my free graphic novel or check out the Brooklyn King Radio Archives uncensored, or check out the bullshit YouTube page for clips. But again, fuck YouTube. It's corporate trash. Support independent websites. Make the internet great again, because it legitimately was at one point. Know your history. Until next time, people, take it light.